You're recording, and I need to do an introduction. Hello! Because I've got time on my hands, and it's time I did some baking, I'm going to make cheese scones today. And I think I got this recipe from, I'm not sure if it was the BBC website, or maybe the Guardian website. I'm not really sure. Got it from somewhere, obviously, and this is what I'm going to do. So, cheese scones. My mum used to make really, really nice cheese scones, and she always said the secret with cheese scones is use more cheese. And the problem is when you buy cheese scones, whether it be in the supermarket or in cafes and things like that, there's not enough cheese in them. And the reason for that, I suspect, is that cheese is the most expensive ingredient, so they're skimping on the cheese. And you buy the idea of a cheese scone, and you're nearly always disappointed. So hopefully, these will not be disappointing. Hopefully, these will be as good as they usually are. So, I'm going to make cheese scones. Right, so we need flour. Flour. So we have lots and lots of flour. Self-raising flour, plain flour. Doesn't matter if you use plain flour as long as you've got baking powder to go with it. I have self-raising flour, so that's alright. Plain flour, salt. I'm getting all the stuff out first to make sure I actually have got all the stuff, because there's nothing worse than getting a little way into making something and then finding you haven't got what you need to finish it. English mustard powder, which is optional. I like to put some in. Cold butter, yeah, that's in the fridge, I know there is, 100 grams of that. Lots of strong cheese, chopped chives if you've got them, a little bit of cold milk or cold water, and an egg if you want to glaze it with it. I never bother with that. So, heat the oven to 220 degrees. That's actually a bit more than 220 degrees at the moment. We had an unfortunate incident with some molten polypropylene, so I'm kind of superheating the oven in order to try and get rid of the smell. Okay, so we mix all the dry ingredients in a bowl. Excuse my backside. We'll need some baking proteins. I generally find I need 3 for this much, so baking trakings. The butter, right, so let's start weighing ingredients. So we need 450 grams of plain flour. Oh, Balance is complaining that its battery's low. Oh, for goodness sake. Can you not squeeze enough out to just... Apparently it can't. Disaster averted, I managed to find a battery. Okay, so where were we? 450 grams of flour. Oh. I'm going to sift the flour, so I'm not going to weigh it straight into the bowl. And the quantities aren't critical, we're talking about around about a pound of flour. That's exactly a pound. Okay, so I'm going to sieve that in. We used to sieve flour all the time, mainly because before the days of central heating, flour often got a little bit damp and a little bit lumpy. Now that it's not only central heating, but it's actually been quite warm, dry weather, probably there isn't really any need, but I'm going to do it anyway because it makes clouds of flour, steam, smoke, vapour, dust, which is all quite exciting. Good, so that's that. Flour, baking powder, salt. We don't need much salt. A teaspoonful of salt. I've only got about a teaspoonful, so that'll do. No need to overdo the salt. Salt, mustard powder, quite a lot of that actually, about a tablespoon of that. And I'm actually going to use a spoon to measure that, so excuse me, the spoons are underneath you. There's a spoon. The mustard powder often is quite lumpy, so I'm going to sieve that too. What about whisking? No, stirring with a spoon is good enough for me. Then we have to get the butter and rub it in. Woohoo! So we need 100 grams of butter, and it has to be cold. or it doesn't really work properly. Now, traditionally, of course, this should be proper hard butter. I never have hard butter because it's always too hard to actually do anything with. So I'm going to use spreadable butter, which works perfectly well. And it's easy to rub it in if it's not rock hard. So we need 100 grams of that, which is quite a lot. So what we need to do now is get this butter in small lumps. And I haven't yet found a way that works much better than just doing this. Get it in small lumps. The recipe says grating the butter, which if it were rock hard butter out of the freezer would probably work quite well, although you don't have a hard time rubbing it into the flour because it would only gradually warm up and become combined. But this seems to work well enough. You just scrape it around the rim of my bowl. And then scrape it off and dump it in the butter. Shovel it about a bit. Whoops, and then do it all over again with the next batch, and so on until you've got all the butter in small lumps distributed in amongst the flour. Now, I'm quite a fastidious person. I don't really like getting my hands greasy and mucky. But for this next stage, as far as I know, there is no better way of doing what's required next than with your fingers. So, like it or not, I have to get my fingers mucky. Although it's not really muck, is it? It's stuff I'm going to eat in a minute, so, yeah. Tell you what though, whilst my hands are still relatively clean, and I don't mind touching my hair with them, I'm going to tie up my hair, or restrain it in some way, because I don't want the hair falling into the dish, and I also don't want to be trying to push it out of my face when I've got butter all over my fingers. So, I don't actually have a hair tie or anything like that on me. But I do have a pencil, so I'm going to do that. So, hair restrained vaguely. Take the oven back to 220. 220? 220. It was. My oven's a bit pessimistic with its temperature indications, so that'll do. You never quite know how an oven's going to behave, and I've not had this cooker all that long. And it was second hand from a shop in Middlesbrough. You can't seem to get... You see, York's too upmarket nowadays, and they don't sell second hand kitchen appliances, or not at sensible prices in York. But they do in Middlesbrough, where people are not so well off. And I'm not well off, and even if I was, there's no need to buy a brand new cooker when there are second hand ones and refurbished ones that are perfectly good and functional, still around. So I went to Middlesbrough, well I was going to Middlesbrough anyway, and took the opportunity to go and buy a cooker. Anyway, it does work very well. In fact, it works slightly too well in that, you know, when it says it's at 220 degrees, it's probably at something more like 250. So anyway, enough talk of ovens. Now we're doing the rubbing in of the butter into the flour. And we just do this. Can you see what I'm doing here? Let's move to a place where you can see it. Can you see that there? Yeah, you can probably see that. And you just lift some fingertips full of flour and butter and rub your fingertips together. And you are breaking up the clumps of butter and combining them with the flour. And you just keep doing this until the whole mixture looks like breadcrumbs or coarse sand or something like that. Talk amongst yourselves for a bit now, or I'll play some elevator music or something, because this isn't the most exciting thing to watch. If I weren't making a film, I'd be listening to a podcast at this point. I find if I play music when I'm cooking, I tend to get distracted and I have to leave off cooking for a bit to go and dance around the living room or play my trombone along with the music. Whereas podcasts, I find rarely induce fits of enthusiastic dancing, and almost never make me want to play my trombone, or indeed any other instrument, or sing along. So yeah, podcasts allow me to be a bit more productive while I'm just doing things with my hands. Anyway, it's now looking a bit more like it probably should. It's beginning to look like sand or breadcrumbs, so let's give a good circle around in there and make sure there's not any big lumps of butter or pockets of dry flour at the bottom of the bowl. Don't think there are. Yeah, I think they're about there. So that wasn't as tedious and long-winded as I thought it would be. I think it somehow goes easier with the spreadable butter. So, this is what it ought to look like when you finish doing the rubbing in bit. So that's straightforward, wasn't it? Okay, then grating the cheese. Add the chives and stir to combine. So, we've got to grate some cheese now. And we need 250 grams of cheese. Okay, so the recipe says grate in 225 grams of the cheese, leaving you the other 25 grams to sprinkle on the top and make it look nice. I like to err on the side of generosity with my cheese, so I'm going to mix all 250 grams in straight away. So I need a knife with which to cut the cheese, a knife to cut the cheese with. I reckon maybe at least that much, 250 grams. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's only 150, so most of what's left. So this will leave me cheeseless. But you don't want cheese on your cheese scones, that would be too much cheese. That's 248, that's close enough. I just need to check that this really is cheese and not some other yellow plastic substance. It'll do, okay. So then we've got to grate in the cheese. Possibly more modern, progressive, up-to-date households have some electric device or food processing thingy that can grate cheese like this, but I haven't. I've just got a grater. If you're wondering why there's a stack of cassettes on my kitchen worktop, it's because some considerable time ago I sold my old truck. It would have been about 18 months ago now, and that truck had a cassette player, and so I kept cassettes in it, and these are the cassettes that were taken out. And then because I was in a bit of a hurry and busy at the time, and probably because I was lazy and probably because I was a bit depressed and was having trouble making myself do things at the time, I just cleared out the truck and put all the stuff in it in a box, and it stayed there until quite recently in the box, and then I had to clear out the box in order to make space in my workshop. And you know how it is, you tidy stuff up and then you don't know what to do with the stuff that you've tidied up. So now they're just sitting on the kitchen counter. I suppose I've good intentions to digitise them and convert them to MP3s, which I can keep on my phone or something, but as yet I've not got around to it. Very interesting. You don't have to do the mixing of the cheese with the previous dough mixture with your hands, but for whatever reason I just felt I should. Anyway, it could be Bailey snoring, that noise I can hear. No, I think it's Julie hoovering actually. Well, it may not be Julie, it may be some other member of the household, but somebody is hoovering. So we grate in all the cheese, and then we mix it up. And then we need to make it from a dry mixture into a dough, which the recipe suggests you do with a mixture of milk and water. Normally I just do it with milk, but I'm a bit short of milk and I don't want to have to leave off in the middle of my recipe to go and buy some more. This may yet happen, in which case there will be a cut, but it doesn't really matter. You're just making this moist enough to cohere and form a lump of dough. That's all you've got to do. And the trick with scones is not to make it a soggy dough. You want it to be a light, sort of pasty dough that only just sticks together and comes away from the side of the bowl. So, let's see how much milk we have got. We've got that much milk. We've got that much milk. I think that might be enough. So I'm going to stop using my hands now because now it really does get messy. So, slam in some milk. Probably going to use all of that and a bit of water. And then I'll have to go to the post office before I can have tea. Whoa! That's right, Amanda. Fling it all on your clothes and the floor and wherever else. Any that goes on the floor will be generously cleaned up by my glamorous assistant, Mr. Bailey, in due course. Yeah, that's all the milk gone. Well, whatever. We need to patronise the village shop after all anyway. It constantly amazes me this, that we have a village shop. When I first moved to this village, the village shop was a bit limited in scope, and they didn't sell newspapers, and they didn't sell lots of other stuff. They didn't sell tobacco either. They never licensed for tobacco. And so then, in those days, you know, a substantial proportion of the whole population would drive all the way down to Strensall every day to buy the papers and drive back again. Now, yeah, it's maybe a 5-mile round trip, but when you consider that, you know, maybe a couple of hundred people are all doing it, that's mad. It's an insane use of resources, starting up a car to drive it 5 miles. Anyway, the present owners and operators of the post office are a bit more enlightened, a bit more business minded, and they do actually sell newspapers. And we're going to need some water. I'm going to use the milk bottle because it will rinse out the last traces of water, the milk. A little bit more moisture. There are those who would say that you need to mix and handle your dough mixture as little as possible. They are up to something, yeah. Is there anybody there? Not once for twice and yes for no. Yeah, you should handle this dough as little as possible. I'm quite full of that. I mean, why would you handle it more than you needed to? That just seems a slightly bizarre instruction to me. You handle it just as much as you need to get the job done. Okay, we're nearly there. It's nearly cohering. We've got a certain amount of dry mixture on the bottom of the bowl still, but we're very nearly there now. Yes. Tiny little spritz more moisture, but not too much because we definitely don't want to make it soggy. Yeah, we're about there now, I think. So now we're not so much mixing a mixture as kind of wiping a bowl of dough around the bowl. I've actually made it slightly too damp, so not to worry, it will be fine. It just, my scones might not be quite as light as I would have liked, and I may have to use more flour to just dry things out a bit. So, in preparation for the next step, I'm going to tip that out, roll it out with a rolling pin, and then I'm going to cut out the scones with my cutters and put them in baking tins ready to bake. And when I put them in the baking tins need to be greased, otherwise the scones will stick to them. And if I don't do the greasing now, I'll be caught in the middle with floury hands, and I want greasy hands, not floury hands, or something. So I'm going to grease the tins in advance. I'll just put a little bit of butter in each tin. Something like that. And then, ooh, just push the butter about the tins with my fingertips. Again, there may, pardon me. There may be a less messy way of doing this, but it would probably involve throwing away a piece of paper or something, and what's the point? Your hands are going to get mucky anyway, so and it's good clean muck because it's butter. That's a bit of cheese scone from the previous outing on there. That's possibly slightly more grease in the tins than is required, but better have too much than not enough. Oh, those are good and greasy. Right, I'm going to clean my fingers now because otherwise everything I touch will get really oily. So now what we need to do is throw some flour about on the worktop. And it might as well be more flour as less flour because my mixture's a bit soggy. So besides stopping things from sticking, that will help to just suck some of the moisture out of my dough. So, here we go. Here is my lump of dough. Here is my floury rolling pin. Let's sprinkle a bit more flour on to try and stop things sticking. I'm going to roll that out. It is a bit soggy, that. Yeah, it's far too soggy. See, I went a little bit too far with the water. So, you want more flour to try and stop it sticking to stuff, which is working well enough. And what we're going to do is roll it out until it's about an inch thick, maybe. Something like that. And then there's an optimum size for these cutters, and I can't remember which one it is, but I'm going to go for the middle one. And we just plunge it in and transfer the nascent scone to the baking tray. And I think I can get 6 or so in each baking tray. Doesn't really matter if these aren't perfectly even thickness and everything else. The whole charm of homemade baking is that it hasn't come out of a machine. It has a human touch to it. They will rise a fair bit as they cook. So, and they swell often too, so you can't put them too close together in the baking tray, or they'll just end up with a big splodge of cheese sconage rather than individual scones. Nothing wrong with the splodge, but that's not what I'm aiming for on this particular occasion. Now, it is unfortunate that you reach this stage of the procedure and I've made 10 scones and there's all this dough left over with holes in it, but there's nothing you can do about that. You just have to throw that away or feed it to the dog or to the birds or something. What can you do? Well, I'm talking rubbish, of course. There's absolutely no reason why you can't remould your splodge into a nice ball, roll it out again, and rinse and repeat. In fact, we don't even need to rinse because our fingers are floury anyway. There's some sort of heavy engineering going on next door. I wonder what they're up to. And round we go again. I may have been a little bit too generous with the flour, so now my splodge isn't really cohering. It's got cracks and fissures in it where two surfaces are pushed together, but they are floured. But it doesn't matter. I might get another 2. We're lucky. There's always a temptation to use all your dough, even if one scone you end up with is smaller than all the others. And this is fine, but you have to accept that the last one, the little one, is quite likely to get burnt because it's smaller and will cook quicker, and then it can often end up charred on the outside. All to do with sort of heat transfer and thermal mass and stuff like that. On this occasion I managed to make 19 scones, and the 19th one I sort of made by pressing it into the cutter. So that's going to be an odd one, but that's alright, I'll eat that as a test piece. So now I just need to shuffle things around to make enough space for that 19th one. It's sort of annoying, but what the hey. So, my oven now says it's at the right temperature. Hopefully it doesn't smell too much of polypropylene. There's some smoke coming out, that's a good sign. We do need shells. Cheese on the top. Almost forgot the cheese on the top, damn it. Which is what this little bit left over is for. And if there's any cheese left over when I finished sprinkling, I think I'm going to have it for lunch. So, sprinkling cheese. You don't need to put too much on the top because it just melts and runs down. So, but it's jolly nice. Why is it that cooked cheese is so delicious? I think we're a bit shy of it in this country. You know, we make things with cheese on top. We're kind of okay with toasted cheese. But when we cook something that's got cheese and it kind of gets all that lovely crusty, salty stuff, we kind of, you know, that's not a proper dish. What I like about Spain is that they take brie and roll it in breadcrumbs and deep fry it, and they're quite unashamed about that. It's a proper dish. I mean, it's not a meal in itself, it's only one part of tapas, but you know, it's like a heart attack on a plate, isn't it? Deep fried brie. But what a brilliant idea. Will there be enough sprinkling cheese? Barely. Oh dear, and I was looking forward to eating that bit, but I don't think that's going to be possible. Another 4 scones to go. There's always a bit you can't push through the grater without grating off your thumb. So that may be that bit. That's good. So I do get a bit to nibble after all, because I have to have these. I need to tidy up that bit. And the bit that I couldn't push through the grater. Now I can put them in the oven. And those require 10 minutes. And I mustn't forget them. So set an alarm for 10 minutes, Siri.
The alarm is set for 13:39.
Thank you. So now I can do some clearing up while I wait for them to cook. I think those are just about right. There's a fine line between nicely done and starting to turn too dark brown on the corners. And I think these are just about right. So I shall take them out and turn the oven off. So here they are, or here some of them are. And you can see what I mean about them kind of swelling and spreading out. So this extra one, the bonus one, has sort of joined itself onto the one next door. And if I put them any closer together, then lots of them will have done that. It's not a disaster because I can separate them, and because I greased the tin, they're all nice and loose. So I'm going to tip those out. They say you should put them on a cooling rack so that the bottoms don't go soggy. I've never found that the bottoms do go soggy. So I'm just going to put them all together in one tin, in a heap, and they can cool gently there. Some people prefer the top because of all the lovely melted cheese on there. Some people prefer the bottom because it goes nice and firm and crispy, and you also get sort of extra cheesiness on the bottom where it's been, I don't know why, but at the bottom. Anyway, I like both, which is good because you always end up with both halves. But some people have strong preferences for top or bottom. Well, anyway, if you have a go at these, then come and write me a note or a message in the comments below or whatever, and let me know if you're a top or a bottom. Mm. 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 See, I'm allowed to eat this one because this is the bonus one. I thought there was only going to be 18, but there was 19, and this is the 19th one, so I can eat it. Nobody will know, except mainly the mysterious supernatural entity that lives in my bathroom scales and tells me I've put on weight. But I mean, seriously, you shouldn't eat too many of them. I mean, what is there in here that's good for you? It's flour, pure carbohydrate, it's all starch. Loads of butter. If that wasn't enough fat, then it's full of cheese. Nothing that's good for you is fun to eat, and nothing that's fun to eat is good for you. Well, that's one point of view. Another is that if you're active and energetic and running around all day, like what I am, you need the energy. Can you see how dirty my kitchen is in this picture? Not really. You can just see some junk up on top of the cupboard. Well, who hasn't got junk in their kitchen cupboards?